So, in this presentation, I will analyze the poem Rhodora by Ralph Waldo Emerson. So, the poem takes place in 1847, and it was written by Ralph Waldo Emerson. It is one of Emerson's first two volumes of poetry, and as you can know, some history of Emerson is that he led the Transcendentalist movement in the Transcendentalist period, which was in 1830s, 1840s, during the mid-1800s. And this Transcendentalist period was a protest to industrialization, a protest to the modernization of society. And this poem greatly influences by that and directly depicts this by him talking to nature. So, major themes in this poem. Well, the heading of the poem, which asks the question, whence is the flower? He's asking which and when is a flower. Well, what is he trying to imply by that? He's trying to say, what is so special about this flower? Why is this flower special? What makes this flower special? And with this question, he's trying to get the feeling of divinity out there. And he's trying to say, he's bringing the entire topic of divinity, of the divine essence and everything, by God and everything. And it's the speaker's belief. And Waldo Emerson believes, by saying this, in the divine being, the power that guides the events of the world. He reveals a belief that the world is ordered according to a divine plan, and the speaker's role is merely to accept this divine plan. And he's obviously talking about nature, and for us just to live with nature, instead of crush it and destroy it. So, as this poem carries out, it has different styles to carry out its point of view and what it's trying to convey from it. So, Emerson in his poem uses a familiar rhyme scheme of two paired couplets, followed by 4 lines of alternating rhymes. And, for example, from lines 9 through 16, all the lines end with the following sounds: why, sky, seeing, being, rose, new, suppose, you. And what he's trying to do, he's trying to create a flow and end, so we can all kind of get the feeling of what he's trying to say in the beginning. Because in the beginning of each line, he's emphasizing the beginning of each line with exclamation marks. And what he's trying to do, he's trying to hit what he's trying to say by emphasizing the importance of the beginning of each line, which he usually refers back to nature. And he's trying to foreshadow also a bit to the next part of the poem. Also, this poem uses characteristics from the Romanticism era, which carried out from Europe during the 1800s as a result in protest to the Industrial Revolution. And as you know, the Romanticism, just like the Transcendentalists, are really common and similar, but the Romanticism dealt with the special relationship God had with the universe, and also questioned the reason and tradition and cultural values which society carries with them. And that's the style of this poem. Then, continuing on with imagery, this poem uses imagery in a lot of ways. First of all, it uses imagery of the poem, which elevates ephemeral experience to a greater importance. And this imagery gives us a particular effect which he wants us to give. And example was in lines 5 through 6. He uses descriptive and vivid imagery, like, for example, the purple petal, or red bird, or black water. And what he's trying to do, he's trying to convey the variance in nature, of the different aspects of nature, so we get a point of view of how nature is like, and how complex and different it is. Also, these images blend together to form, and so we can understand the deepness and the significance of what he's trying to say. Not just a one bleak image of what he's saying, but they all blend together to a big picture of nature, and that's what his imagery is used for. Also, the first half mainly uses imagery to describe all this variance in nature, but the second half discontinues the use of imagery. Why is that? Well, the first half is to gain experience of nature by using imagery to give us knowledge of what's happening. And the second is to give us, when we have gained this knowledge, we can use this knowledge to understand the bigger picture of what he's trying to depict on the second half by using exclamation marks, for example, exciting themes, connotations, whatever. But he's trying to give us the bigger picture, and that is the divinity in everything. So, continuing on, general analysis of this poem. So, essentially what the poem tries to do is to emphasize the importance of the interconnectedness of all things in nature, of everything. And what makes this poem really stand out from the rest of his works, which I chose it for, is because he mentions his personal connection to nature and to the flower, the Rhodora. He speaks directly to the flower, the Rhodora, and for example, he uses the word dear to refer to the flower, and that just signifies a personal connection he has to the flower, which is why this poem is one of his grand masterworks he has done. Also, Emerson in this poem uses repetition to outline and emphasize on the flower, which he's trying to speak about. He uses different words to not necessarily does he use repeat words all the time, but what he does say is he repeats the general concept meaning of the word. Instead of saying the flower, he says different meanings which signify the flower, and he's repeating the flower throughout the poem by using words like purple petals, flower, deer, rose, and all these relate to the flower, are personal connections to the flower. So what this repetition of the flower means, it reveals a personal tie which Emerson has to the flower, and of course the bigger picture of the flower is nature. And also, the use of repetition. He wants us to notice this. So we can focus on the flower, and so we can relate to it, which is nature again. So in order to convey what he's trying to say of the nature in the flower, he starts out with different tones in the poem. In the first part of the poem, from lines 1 through 8, he starts off exciting. Using the word pierced. For example, in May, when sea winds pierced our solitudes. What is he trying to say? He's saying when sea winds pierced our solitude, when it came through, it's the beginning, the violent awakening of springtime, and he's symbolizing this by using the words pierced and in an exciting tone. And then when the poem continues on, it starts using a more austere, bleak tone to compare and contrast the different parts of nature and the variants of nature by using bleak imagery. For example, black. He doesn't necessarily mention anything black, but when he talks about the pond, he mentions it as being black. What does he mean by the pond being black? Well, he means the pond being black by the dark tone coming. He doesn't necessarily mean the pond is black, relatively. What he's trying to say is the pond, it's coming out of a long, dark, bleak winter into the warmth of spring. And he focuses on the dark, untamed environment and appeals to the sense of established beauty, which his pond is. And that's what he's trying to convey with black. Not a dark, pathologic image which it creates, but a beautiful image of nature, which we, after evaluating the poem, you can understand. And then, continuing to the first part on line 8, he emphasizes on the beauty of the flower compared to the bird. What is he doing there? Well, as you know in this poem, he also talks about a bird. He talks about the red bird. A red bird in New England is a cardinal. It's one of the most typical birds that existed, especially during springtime. So he's comparing the flower to the cardinal, and they're both red. They're both vivid in color, and he's trying to compare how the cardinal is jealous of the flower, of its beauty, and this flower trumps the cardinal's pride. The egotistic pride that this bird carries with it. It doesn't want the flower to just destroy and mock its own beauty and color, which it also has. So Emerson continues saying on this in his poem, in this track, that here might the red bird come his plumes to cool, and court the flower that cheapens his ray. He's not necessarily making the flower look bad, but he's jealous of the flower, and Emerson is noticing this. And of course, thinking of this in the big picture, he's depicting us humans, and of course he depicts us humans as part of nature, but he depicts the bigger picture that we're all jealous, just like nature is to each other. Then on the second part of the line, from lines 9 through 16, he starts off exciting again. He uses exclamation marks. He highlights his own personal connection to the flower. He directly talks to the flower by using personal connections. For example, he uses Rhodora. He's speaking directly to the flower. He wants us to notice that he's speaking directly to the flower, which is to nature. So he uses foreshadowing. Also, after this, he uses foreshadowing by depicting nature, and also the notion of eyes. He wants us to kind of think of eyes and the seeing part of seeing nature, but he's not literally meaning seeing nature, but seeing the big picture of nature and the divinity and everything in nature by looking the complexity of the beauty nature carries in itself. Not just looking at straight on, but to exemplify what nature has to offer, and everything has. And he's trying to stress out the fact that there's more than just literal seeing out there, but what you have to do is understand the truth beyond the physical attributes of living things, and that's what he's trying to emphasize on that part by foreshadowing using words like seeing, eyes, and so we can foreshadow a little to the next part of the poem. And then again, the poem starts to flow. It's a short poem. Then again, he brings up questions in the poem. For example, I never thought to ask, or he tells him, why though wert there? I never thought to ask. I never knew. And he questions us. He uses the feeling of mystery, of curiosity, to bring out that he wants us to question life through this tone. He wants us to question life and try to understand the mystery of it. And why is he doing this? Well, he does this so we can appreciate life a lot more. We can appreciate nature a lot more when we start to question it, and when we start to question the complexity of nature, how it's all made of, the divine essence and everything. And once we actually start to question it and understand how big how complex nature is, can we finally start to underline the importance and start to admire and appreciate nature as he wants us to. And then in the final line of the poem, a tone of fulfillment arises. He answers the mystery, which is the curiosity and the questions what he's saying, by saying, obviously he's answering the question that nature was made for you to appreciate it, but he's also answering the question that a divine power, there's a divine essence in all of us. The same self-same power. He's talking about the divine essence we all carry inside of us. This divine essence which all nature carries, even us. And that's what he's trying to emphasize in his last, and that's why a tone of fulfillment arises. And the deep meaning which all this tone in this poem is trying to carry out, especially in the beginning, is when he's talking about spring. First of all, Rhodora. Rhodora is a plant which grows all over the world, but especially in England in the woods. And it is the first plant to blossom during the springtime. It is the first plant. That's why he chooses it. Because it's okay, usually plants blossom in the mid-May area. Well, the Rhodora plants in the March area. So it is first plant to bloom. That's why it's special. That's why he chooses it. Because it stands out from the rest. Nothing else has started to blossom, and that's the flower, and that's why he chooses it. And he's emphasizing the start of spring, when all nature starts to blossom during spring, to its beauty, coming from long, continuous winter to into beautiful springtime. So continuing on, also what he wants us to notice is his personal connection to nature, and that is important, and that everyone's personal connection to nature is important. And for example, he uses words like in the woods, leaves blooms, to just describe nature in his own, when he directs to the flower personally. Also, Emerson tries to stress out the fact that there's more than just literal seeing. There's more. Okay, there's more than just literal seeing. For example, the Rhodora's beauty, just seeing how beautiful and red and vivid it is. But also, it's understanding the truth beyond the physical attributes which the flower carries. Yes, there's a beyond. And also he wants us to understand the divine essence in nature, that we all connected to each other by the same divine being that created all of us, which is God. And he does show this in his poem. In the last quote, for example, he says, the self-same power that brought me brought you. He's talking about the divine being, the self-same divine power that brought me and nature together so we can be interconnected. But the major overall point from this entire poem is what Emerson is trying to convey, is the interconnectedness between all things, between all of nature, the nature and humans too, especially nature and humans. He's trying to emphasize on the connection of nature and humans, because humans have lost this connection due to modernization, due to the influence of social values and factors and everything. And he's trying to emphasize this beautiful connection we have with nature, which we have to regain again. And what he wants us to appreciate the flower and to enjoy its beauty. Because merely when us humans walk through a flower, we don't appreciate it, we ignore it. And he wants us to appreciate the flower. And that's what that's what he's trying to, that we're all connected. And that we should appreciate things, because there's a divine essence in all of us that created us all. And for example, as